My name's Amy. I'm a 24-year-old graphic designer. I'm not seeing anyone at the moment, but work is going well, and I'm living alone in my grandparents' house in the next town over from my childhood home. I didn't have any issues with my work relationships, but my real family was the one issue that constantly troubled me. I have an older sister by 2 years, Melissa, who my parents have always favored. As a kid, I loved to draw, but Melissa would say things like, "Mom, Amy's doodling again. It's embarrassing that a loner like her is my sister," snatch my drawings and throw them in the trash. My parents were smitten with Melissa, and I'd only ever see them nodding along to whatever she said. They told me that once I finished my compulsory education, I needed to work and bring money into the household. But my maternal grandparents didn't want that for me and took me in. Thanks to my grandparents, I was able to attend a high school in the neighboring town. I wanted to repay them as soon as I graduated high school, but they let me go to the vocational school instead. I've always loved drawing original characters, so I wanted to turn that hobby into a career and went to a graphic design school. Since my student days, whenever I found a logo or design or competition open to amateurs, I would apply. A few companies picked up the designs I submitted, but one company wanted to use an original character I drew as their company mascot. This became my break, and after graduating from the vocational school, I became a freelance designer and worked from home at my grandparents' house, never having worked for any company. My grandparents had been on a journey touring the national parks of America for about a year, so I'm living alone and managing the house in their absence. But Melissa keeps saying to me, "Are you still living off our grandparents? You're old enough. You should be independent. Dad and Mom are upset. When are you going to start contributing money to the household? Stop wasting your time on your geeky stuff and get to work." When I retorted with, "I'm just looking after the house while they're traveling, and besides, I do work. But isn't it weird to ask me to give money to a household I'm not even living in?" She didn't believe me. "No matter what you say, your job is like a side gig, right? You shouldn't be proud of working like that." She seemed determined to look down on me no matter what. As for Melissa, our parents paid her college tuition, and she landed a job thanks to our dad's connections. She lived off an allowance when she was a student. She used to receive a pretty big allowance, but when she ran out, she would occasionally work a one-day gig at a nightclub for the free drinks and the tips. On the other hand, I had been working part-time jobs since my student days, and I've been giving my grandparents money bit by bit. My grandparents told me they didn't need it, but I insisted, saying that even among loved ones, courtesy is important, and I gave them a part of my earnings. Melissa had no idea about any of this and looked down on me. Usually, I don't get much contact from my family, but when something bothers them, they take it out on me without considering my circumstances. If I tried to retort, they would make more snide remarks, so I usually just let them talk. One day, after things like this had been happening for a while, Melissa handed me an invitation and said, "I'm getting married. Give this to our grandparents." My name was also on the invitation. "My fiancé is the heir to a major company. He's the next CEO. Elites are attracted to a beauty like me. If our grandparents are coming, I suppose it's okay for you to come too," she boasted. I responded with insincere congratulations like, "Congrats on your wedding. I'm jealous, so jealous of you, Melissa." Then Melissa said, "I knew a geeky loner like you wouldn't have anyone interested. You don't have a boyfriend, do you? I always have at least 3. It's boring to have just one guy." "Do you want me to introduce you to someone? I can give you any of my old boyfriends." "Oh, but you're a lazy shut-in, so that might not work." I politely declined Melissa's offer. I was amazed that there was a rich guy willing to marry a woman as nasty as Melissa. After that, Melissa's bragging continued for about an hour, but I unconsciously tuned it out and don't remember a thing. Maybe she was satisfied with her bragging, but Melissa left in high spirits. I had reached out to my grandparents, but they responded that they would be absent due to a luxury cruise trip. At first, I thought that if my grandparents were not attending, I wouldn't need to either. However, after rereading the invitation from my sister, I decided to attend. Thus, I wrote back on my sister's wedding invitation stating that alone I would be attending and sent it back. After a month of ensuring that I could take the day off for my sister's wedding, I was able to wrap up my work the day before. That's when my phone rang. I thought it might be an unexpected work request, but it was my sister on the other end. Moreover, it was a video call. I didn't want to answer because I had a face mask on, but I picked up the phone reluctantly because I didn't know what she would say if I didn't. Hello, what's up? I'll definitely be there tomorrow. What are you talking about? And what are you doing? It's useless for an ugly person like you to take care of your skin. You don't need to come to the wedding tomorrow. I was surprised to be told by my sister, who had called me unexpectedly, that I didn't need to come to the wedding tomorrow. While I was taken aback by my sister's word, my parents also popped their heads in from behind and laughed at me. Next to my laughing parents, my sister once again said to me, "Please don't attend the wedding tomorrow, you bottom-tier loser." What? But being absent? It's okay. I'll tell them that you caught a cold or something. I don't want them to think that my sister is like you. It's embarrassing, so don't come. I'll make sure you can't even if you do. I'll lend you my man, so why don't you go and experience what a date is like? It seemed that my sister did not want me to attend. Furthermore, I was a little puzzled by my sister's last words. After thinking a bit, I told her, "Understood. I won't have anything more to do with all of you. I don't think of you as a family. I'll cut off my ties. But remember, I won't be responsible for whatever happens," and hung up. As I was about to hang up, I had a feeling that my sister was sneering at my words. But I ended the call without worrying about it. The next day, since there was no more wedding I had to attend, I was enjoying my long-awaited day off. As I was barbecuing in my backyard, the intercom at my house suddenly rang. There stood my sister and parents. "Hello, wasn't today supposed to be Melissa's wedding?" I was waiting for my fiancé at the wedding venue, but no one showed up. Even when I asked the staff, they said that it had been canceled and there was no wedding scheduled, she yelled. To my sister's outcry, I calmly responded, "What does that have to do with me? Besides, I told you that I don't care what happens. I cut ties with you all yesterday. Please leave me alone." Everything started when my sister called me yesterday and told me not to attend the wedding. After hanging up the phone with my sister, I contacted someone. It was the father of my sister's fiancé. The reason I was able to get in touch with him was that he was the president of the company I work for. "Steve, I'm sorry to bother you when you're busy. I won't be able to attend the wedding of your son tomorrow." I had called Steve immediately after hanging up the phone with my sister. In fact, when I received an invitation from my sister announcing her marriage, I only thought that the name of her fiancé Robert seemed familiar. It was only later when I received the same invitation from Steve. So I was taken aback to learn that the man who was marrying my sister was Robert. But when I told Steve that the bride was my sister, he joyfully said, "When Robert talks about Melissa, he always looks so happy. When I met Melissa, she was a wonderful lady. She's definitely your sister, Amy. We look forward to working with you both personally and professionally." Given this, I assumed my sister had cleaned up her past relationships with men. However, the fact that I was unable to attend because my sister told me not to come to the wedding was something I felt I had to tell Steve, who I had promised to meet at the wedding. When I did, Steve asked me, "What happened? The ceremony is tomorrow, isn't it? Did you overwork yourself and get sick?" And seemed very worried about me. It was a bit hard for me to say, but I decided to relay exactly what my sister had told me. She told me, "A bottom-rung loser like you should not attend the wedding tomorrow." She called you a bottom-rung loser? Even though you're such a successful designer? Does your sister not know? He seemed outraged that I was being called a loser. The only people who understand me are my grandparents, who are currently overseas. And about what my sister said. I told a story about my family that I had never told anyone before. Apparently, Steve immediately told Robert about the conversation, and Robert was very angry too. Steve's family values their kinship, thinking of their employees as family. Although I'm not an employee, they seem to value me as well because I work with them, considering me as part of the family. We don't consider people who can't cherish the family we value as our family. "We're sorry, but we can't accept your family into ours," he said to me. Robert, who was nearby, said, "I'm sorry, Amy, but I'm thinking about calling off the wedding with Melissa." To his words, I said, "Robert, I have cut ties with my family, so you can do whatever you want. Also, there's something else I need to tell you," and decided to share a certain fact. What is it? Robert, not knowing what he was about to be told, responded in a worried voice. Feeling apologetic, I told him what my sister had said to me. After she told me to skip the wedding, my sister said she was going to lend her boyfriend to me. So, I hesitate to say this, but I think my sister has had bad habits with men since the old days. I suspect that she might have another man aside from you, Robert. What? She told me she was single when we started dating. And she came on to me. He seemed a bit shocked. Steve then came on the speaker. "Amy, you said you're free tomorrow, right?" "Yes, I plan to be at home all day." "I see. Our family will not attend the wedding. We have a proposal for you." Thinking it sounded fun, I agreed. The plan was to have a barbecue at my house on the day of the wedding. So, when my sister and my parents came to my house, we were in the middle of the barbecue, including Steve and Robert. As I was dealing with them at the front door, Robert, noticing the three of them had arrived, peeked out the door. "Why is Robert here? Today is supposed to be the wedding." We went to the venue and were told the wedding was canceled. None of the attendees from your side showed up. And we couldn't contact anyone, so we were worried. Why are you here? Don't tell me you two have been... disgusting. My sister, upon seeing Robert, came at us all at once. There, Robert sighed heavily and told my sister quietly, "You're someone who can't cherish family. We heard about your attitude and words towards Amy. You told me your sister was busy with work and couldn't see you often, but that's not the case at all." "Well, I'm ashamed that this unemployed loser is my sister. It's better for our public image to say that she's busy with work, isn't it? That's why I've been saying she's busy with work. What's wrong with that? I've been speaking well of her in public. I would appreciate some gratitude for that." My sister insisted it was for my sake. Seeing my sister like this, Robert defended me, emphasizing how much I contributed to his company. "You know, it's proof of not valuing family when you, her own sister, have no idea what kind of work Amy does. You've been calling her unemployed, but her income should be at least double yours. And your parents treated Amy the same way, right? I can't be with someone who can't value their own family. We should consider our engagement off." "What? Off? Does that mean I can't get married?" Even though Melissa seemed furious, she turned towards me with a mocking grin. "Wait, Amy's job is that amazing? I wouldn't have known unless someone told me. From now on, I promise to listen to you, Amy. Let's get along better." After Robert pointed it out, Melissa's attitude towards me changed dramatically. Whether it was due to an interest in my salary or not, my family was trying to suck up to me, but I rejected them clearly. No way. After all the humiliation and looking down upon me, it's too convenient to now say, "Let's get along." Stop joking. No matter how much you try to flatter me, I won't help you financially. I told you yesterday, I've cut ties with you as a family. Don't get involved with me anymore. If you continue to stay here, I'll call the police. If you don't want that, leave right now. The moment I mentioned police, the three of them changed color and quickly dispersed. After that, Robert and I returned to the backyard and continued enjoying our barbecue. A month later, I received a call from an unknown number. Assuming it was work-related, I decided to answer. "Hey, I got a bill from Robert. What did you say? You knew about my affair?" Before I could say hello, Melissa's shrill voice echoed in my ear. "What are you talking about all of a sudden? I've repeatedly told you not to involve me. But you still do. I don't care about your affair anymore, so please never contact me again." With that, I hung up. Later, I heard from Robert that the investigation of Melissa's affair during their engagement had finished, and it seemed possible to claim compensation and cancellation fees from the venue. As Melissa had quit her job with the plan of getting married, I heard she was juggling several part-time jobs to somehow pay the compensation. She seemed to have run crying to her parents, but their income had never been great, so I don't think that they could be of much help. As someone who was spoiled until now, I hope Melissa takes responsibility for what she's done. Currently, I'm still working with Steve's company. We've been discussing the opportunity for me to create various products as an exclusive designer. I look forward to continuing to work happily with these kind of people in the future.
Outsiders don't need to come to the funeral, haha. On the night my kind father-in-law passed away, a wake was held. Those were the words of my mother-in-law, who had thrown all the care for my father-in-law onto us, my husband and I. What? Yes, it's a family ceremony, so outsiders should refrain. And remember, Dad's inheritance of $2 million is ours, my sister-in-law said, to which my husband responded in surprise.
Brother, sister, what are you talking about? It's Dad's funeral, and about the $2 million.
My mother-in-law replied, seemingly irritated. We're not giving the inheritance to you, the youngest one. You should renounce your right to inherit.
That's selfish. I don't care about the inheritance,
my husband said, and I continued in a teary voice. Exactly. Let us say our proper goodbyes to father-in-law. Then my mother-in-law glared at me. Why are you, an outsider, acting like family? By the way, Dad told the nurse to call you at the last moment.
Could it be that you were having an affair with my father?
My brother-in-law and sister-in-law exaggeratedly showed disgust. Ew, dirty. Were you trying to seduce Dad to get his inheritance? Michael, you married a terrible woman. I clenched my fists tightly. To treat my gentle husband and father-in-law so poorly, and even suspect an affair between my father-in-law and me? I couldn't believe such horrible people existed. With a calm voice, I said, Understood, we won't attend the funeral. My name is Mary. I'm turning 32 this year. I met my husband Michael in college through a club we both joined, and we got married. I work in public service, and my husband works in an IT company. We both work and live happily together. Michael, it's about time to bring fresh clothes for your father, isn't it?
Oh, right. Thank you always, Mary.
On this day off for both of us, after doing some shopping, we headed to the hospital where my father-in-law was admitted.
Oh, Michael, Mary, so nice to see you too.
Lying on the bed in the private room and smiling, my father-in-law had a stroke last year and is left with paralysis on the left side of his body. Since then, he's been hospitalized and diligently undergoing rehab.
It was quite cold outside, Dad. I see. You both take care not to catch a cold.
My husband spoke gently. I arranged his clothes and arranged the flowers we brought.
Mary, Michael, thank you for always looking out for someone like me. What are you saying, Dad? Don't worry about it.
Yes, please let us know if there's anything else we can do. As we were having our usual conversation, the door to the hospital room suddenly opened. Then my mother-in-law, brother-in-law John, and sister-in-law Emily rudely entered the room. Upon seeing us, my mother-in-law said conspicuously, "Oh, it's you, Michael, and what was your name again?" At her words, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law chimed in.
Hey, Mom, that's a bit much, don't you think? Haha. Just because she's the leftovers bride, haha.
That's right. Her name is Maria, right? Haha. I kept silent, looking down. We had been married for 3 years, and I had met my mother-in-law numerous times. It's impossible that they don't know my name.
Hey, Mom, big bro and sis, stop being rude to Mary.
My husband Michael said in an irritated tone. His mother exaggeratedly shrugged her shoulders. Oh, I was kidding. Why are you so mad?
A joke. You guys always...
Michael tried to continue, but his mother cut him off. Enough! We're going to have a family discussion now. You two are excused.
We're family too.
Michael protested, but his elder brother shooed us away with a shh gesture.
You third wheel and still want to hang around? Get out already, haha.
My sister-in-law also chimed in, giggling. Yeah, this discussion doesn't concern outsiders like you. Michael looked upset. He turned to me and said, let's go. I bowed to my father-in-law, who was troubled by the situation, and left the hospital room with Michael. On our way home, Michael apologized to me.
Mary, I'm truly sorry for my family's behavior.
I shook my head and responded, no, you're the one who's truly hurt, aren't you? Michael managed a weak smile at my words. He was born as the third and youngest child. From what he had told me, his mother had always favored his older siblings, and she ignored him most of the time. According to Michael, his mother never attended his school events like parent-teacher conferences or sports days. While his siblings were always gifted expensive new things, he only got hand-me-downs that were old and worn. Even as a child, he had learned not to ask for anything. While his underachieving siblings were funded through private universities, Michael, who was a good student with good grades, was told by his mother to work after middle school and that she wouldn't pay for his tuition for higher education. Michael had to take out student loans and attend a public high school and a relatively inexpensive state university, where he managed to find his current job. When I met his family for the first time after we decided to get married, his mother showed no interest. I don't care what you do, she had said, not even offering us anything to drink. His brother and sister looked at me with amusement, making fun of me.
You really must be a masochist to marry such a leftover, haha.
Absolutely. You must really have a peculiar type, haha. My husband has always been treated as an inconvenience to his family, a third wheel. This treatment didn't change even after we got married. We were consistently left out of family events such as weddings and funerals. As a result, we were later scolded by relatives for not showing up, asking, why didn't you attend?
But my father always had my back,
Michael said, squinting his eyes. When Michael was a child, his father was often away on business trips, hardly ever at home. However, on occasions like Christmas and birthdays, even when Michael didn't receive a gift from his mother, his father always made sure to have something for him. Despite his busy schedule, there were times he took off work to attend Michael's graduation. When we got married, it was only his father who seemed genuinely happy and blessed us. A kind father-in-law, always concerned about us. But to his family, his wife and other children, he was merely a convenient ATM, treated callously. So when my father-in-law fell ill, it was us who took on the task of his daily care and looking after him. Michael, I promise to look after both you and your father, I told him. Grasping my hand, Michael thanked me, saying,
thank you. I really appreciate you.
Months passed, and then we received a call from the hospital. My father-in-law had suffered a stroke again. By the time we arrived, it was too late. My father-in-law had passed away.
Dad, I wanted to do more nice things to you and be a more devoted son.
Overwhelmed by grief, Michael cried out, looking at his peacefully sleeping father. I too shed tears. remembering the kind words and smiles from my father-in-law. My mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law arrived, but they didn't shed a tear. In fact, they seemed in rather good spirits. "I can't be bothered, so you take care of the funeral arrangements," my mother-in-law said, pushing a funeral home brochure into my hands before swiftly returning home. Although we were stunned, we knew we had to send off my father-in-law properly. We immediately contacted the funeral home and arranged for the wake and funeral. Days passed. After the wake ended and the guests had left, I approached my mother-in-law, now in her mourning clothes, about the arrangements for tomorrow's funeral. I started. "Oh, don't worry about that. The funeral director will take care of it," she interrupted. And then she said something shocking. "You outsiders don't need to come to the funeral." "What?" "Huh?" Michael and I exclaimed in unison. Smiling slyly, brother-in-law John chimed in. "Thanks for taking care of Dad all this time, but we don't need you guys anymore. Don't come to the funeral." "What? What do you mean?" I asked, shaken. Then my sister-in-law Emily continued. "Exactly what we said. This is a family funeral. We don't need outsiders. Besides, Dad's $2 million inheritance is ours now." In shock, Michael asked, "Brother, sister, what are you talking about? It's Dad's funeral, and about the $2 million. My mother-in-law replied, seemingly irritated. "We're not giving the inheritance to you, the youngest one. You should renounce your right to inherit." "That's selfish. I don't care about the inheritance," my husband said, and I continued in a teary voice. "Exactly. Let us say our proper goodbyes to father-in-law." Then my mother-in-law glared at me. "Why are you, an outsider, acting like family? By the way, Dad told the nurse to call you at the last moment." "That's because I was the one taking care of him." But my brother-in-law and sister-in-law snorted dramatically in disgust. "Could it be you had a thing with our dad?" "Ew, dirty. Were you trying to seduce Dad to get his inheritance? Michael, you married a terrible woman." "Shut up, Mary is..." My husband started in a voice tinged with rage, but my mother-in-law quickly interrupted him. "A woman who'd have an affair with her father-in-law and a low-life youngest son aren't family. Don't you dare come near us ever again." I clenched my fists tightly. To treat my gentle husband and father-in-law so poorly, and even suspect an affair between my father-in-law and me? I couldn't believe such horrible people existed. Just as I was about to burst out in anger, my husband raised his voice. "Enough! How dare you insult Mary? She took such diligent care of him." "It's okay, Michael." I calmed my husband and spoke in a composed voice. "We understand your point. We won't attend the funeral." My husband followed suit, with his voice trembling. "Yeah, we can no longer consider you family after being insulted like this. We'll pay our respects to Dad at his grave." My husband and I paid our last respects to my father-in-law and left the room. 2 days later, there were multiple missed calls from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. When I told my husband, he said he'd also received some. "There's no need to answer those calls. Let's just ignore them." Agreeing with my husband, I didn't pick up any of the calls. However, the calls didn't stop. A week later, just as I was thinking of blocking their numbers, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law showed up at our apartment. "What do you want now?" my husband asked grumpily. My mother-in-law began ranting, looking as if she'd seen a ghost. "We just found out that all of Dad's fortune is yours. How is that possible?" At this, my husband calmly replied, "Yeah, a lawyer came by and told us everything." In fact, the day after the funeral, a lawyer had visited us and informed us that my father-in-law had left a will leaving all his property to us. We had already started the process of claiming the inheritance.
You must have thought that as family, you'd naturally get a share of the inheritance, right? Under normal circumstances, you'd indeed be entitled to a certain percentage, right?
That's right. And yet the lawyer said that we have no right to the inheritance, that everything will go to Michael. To my mother-in-law's raging remarks, my husband and I calmly replied, "Of course, my father-in-law had asked his lawyer to disinherit you all while he was alive."
If inheritance gets abolished, you wouldn't even get the minimum statutory share.
Then my brother-in-law, spitting with rage, lunges at my husband Michael.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. The abolishing of inheritance. It's not fair.
Then my husband answers with a voice seeping with anger.
Bro, weren't you constantly bad-mouthing our frail, elderly father, saying he's useless and should be gotten rid of soon? Our dad kept a record of everything while he was alive. That's... And you were secretly using his bank account while he couldn't move, weren't you? That's a fine reason for inheritance, disinheritance. How do you guys know all that?
Our father-in-law collected evidence and arranged for it to reach us and the lawyer. Michael continues with a look of contempt for his mother.
Did you know that a spouse who's been cheating for years can also be disinherited? Didn't you know that?
Your suspicion about my father-in-law's affairs was because you were having one yourself. Hearing our words, my mother-in-law's face gradually lost its color, turning pale.
It's all because of the terrible things you three did to Dad. It's too late to change anything now,
Michael says grimly. Then my brother-in-law suddenly starts begging, even prostrating himself on the floor.
Mike, please, split the inheritance with me. I need money because my business failed.
My sister-in-law also follows him, her face a mess of tears and snot, clinging to my husband's arm. I apologize for everything. If my husband finds out about my debts, I'll be divorced. Looking down at them, my husband coldly dismisses them.
I won't forget what you guys did to us. I will never forgive you.
Then my mother-in-law, stomping her foot in frustration, screams out, "How am I supposed to live from now on? We're family, aren't we? Help me!" Michael and I look at each other and say in unison, "Family, you say? Who was it that said strangers shouldn't come to the funeral?"
There's no way we're helping you guys. Figure it out yourselves,
Michael says and shuts out the three of them. But still, they continue to scream. But as soon as the property manager who heard the commotion came, those three shuffled away, tails between their legs. Shortly after, we, as a couple, received all of my father-in-law's estate and moved to a new place to prevent any further attacks, and we also locked our records securely. This is a story we heard from relatives, but afterward, my brother-in-law apparently begged relatives for a loan, only to be turned down and ended up borrowing money from moneylenders. Now, he's being hounded by a group of tough-looking guys. My sister-in-law, her chronic debt finally discovered by her husband, was divorced and moved back home. Now, she's reportedly working in a nightclub to pay off her debt. My mother-in-law, after being discarded by her gold-digging affair partner, has aged considerably. These three now live in a run-down, one-bedroom apartment, barely getting by with the bare necessities. But it's no longer any of our concern. On the other hand, a precious baby boy was born to us. With the kindness that my father-in-law showed us, we now want to shower our son with love and live happily